Hey guys, it is MissSimReno. If you are returning to the channel, welcome back. And if you are brand new, I am very excited that you decided to join me here today for another speed build. And you could probably already guess from the thumbnail, we are building a somewhat traditional Japanese home. And this is heavily inspired by the Snowy Escape expansion pack that was announced that is going to be released on November 13th. So what I did is I immediately went off and did a ton of research on traditional Japanese homes because it seems as though the Japanese culture is the one that is heavily influencing this pack. We don't really know for sure, but it definitely looks that way, at least with what I've been seeing on Twitter and just like comments all over the place. People are very excited about this representation in the game, and I share in that excitement. So what I did is I did a ton of research, and I wanted to make what seemed like a traditional Japanese home on the exterior. However, on the interior, I do want it to be functional as always. So I kind of had to make it a little bit more modernized on the interior. I didn't really want to, but I kind of had to. I felt like I didn't really have a choice just because, you know, we don't have the ability for Sims to sit on cushions at like a lower table. We don't have a lower dining table. Just little elements like that I knew I wasn't going to be able to replicate. As well as like the kitchens too. They're definitely not as modernized and they're not as like big, I think, as maybe like American kitchens, like Americanized kitchens, I should say. But anyway, we started on the exterior, and the exterior was so much fun. What took me the absolute longest amount of time was trying to figure out the roofs and kind of like the very small but very prominent and important details in the architecture of a lot of like traditional Japanese homes. What I did learn is that a lot of them are made out of wood. Like that's the main material that is used, and kind of depending on the time period, there were some more like stone foundations or some homes that were made out of stone, at least from what I'm recalling right now. And there were some that were on like stilt foundations and stuff like that. So it really just kind of depends what kind of structure it is, the time period, you know, all that fun stuff. But I stuck with wood just because I thought that we had a lot in game that could replicate that look without having objects that are specific for these kinds of builds. You know what I mean? I'm very excited to see what the build and buy is going to look like for this pack because I can't wait to really make something very, very authentic with items that are meant for structures like that. So I hope that makes sense. But as you can see right here, I actually made this little like meditation hut in a sense. I didn't want to make it a shrine or anything like that just because I know that there are different religious purposes, just different meanings behind things like that, and I wanted to be very careful with something like that. So I decided to just make it like a little meditation hut, but at the end of the day, it almost doesn't even matter because building this made me realize that we can't place stairs diagonally. I just came to this realization as I built this, and I literally posted in my Discord and I was like, is this a thing? Did I just learn this? And everyone else was either shook or they already freaking knew, and I had no idea. So as you can see, I put like a meditation stool and I sized it one up to make it look like a little step up into this hut. But your Sims won't even be able to get in here. So that's really disappointing to me because I loved placing it on that diagonal amongst that little garden and like the raised garden beds. I thought it was really nice and I thought it would be a very peaceful place to meditate or something, and you can't. So that kind of stinks, but now I am working on the main home. So it is a 2-story home and I only built it for a family of 3 Sims. I was going to try to make it like a multi-generational home. So I was going to try to have grandparents, parents, and grandchildren all under one roof, or have 2 separate homes that were attached by like an open and or covered walkway. I thought that that might kind of look cool because from what I was seeing in a lot of reference pictures, there were some semi-attached homes and they were attached by walkways, so you could kind of walk around an entire complex in a sense, if that makes any sense. But I wasn't really able to do that. I didn't feel as though I had the room to do what I really wanted to, so I ended up just making one bigger looking home for a family of 3. And like I said, the roofing was what I struggled with the most. I really, really love the roofs in a lot of traditional Japanese homes. And I love these little like wood support details because since the roofs have kind of a wider lip, I suppose, there are some additional supports that are needed. So I went ahead and I made like a single tile wall, quote unquote, room. And then I just duplicated it around the entire home because I layered 3 of those little supports from Get Together, I think, because they look to be the most similar to a lot of the details that I was seeing for the roof supports in traditional Japanese homes. So I hope you guys agree. I hope I did it justice. And I don't know, I just really like the shape of it. It's a very simply shaped home. And what I've noticed is I was very comfortable with just a box. Like this home literally is just a box with an additional box on the front. And I was very comfortable with that because the roof is so unique and has so much character that it felt okay. And that's really weird for me to say because typically just like a home that's a box, I do not enjoy. And that's just me. That's just me. I love other people that build boxes, but when I build a box, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. So I don't know if that makes sense, but here I was trying to kind of futz with a walkway that connected the 2 homes, but I honestly struggled with trying to get a roof to kind of attach on this side that I felt worked to make sure that it was kind of covered. It just didn't look right to me. So I ended up just squashing it because I didn't want to do it any injustice. I wanted it to look good. I didn't want it to look like I was trying to cram things together. I also tried to make maybe this little like side entrance as well. But again, the roof was just giving me some issues and I wanted it to look balanced with the 2 kind of curved A-frame. That's not correct, but like, you know what I mean? Your standard roof, it kind of looks just like a triangle. The ones that are curved, I had to have one of those on each side. So I didn't end up sticking with that, but I should also mention that since we don't have any of the appropriate like doors or windows to really replicate authentic Japanese homes, I ended up using these room dividers from Discover University and kind of merging them into archways to make it look as though they were the paper sliding doors. Because what I've noticed is in a lot of traditional Japanese homes, everything is divided by like an archway, or everything is just very open in general. So it's very open. There are these paper like sliding doors that can kind of close off for some privacy, but everything is very, very open concept in a lot of ways. So I wanted to kind of replicate that a little bit. But as you can see here, I am making, technically it is a pool, but I'm thinking it's a pond. And there are actually kind of like 2 separate pond areas in this build that I end up making. So this one is the biggest one, and it took me so long to find something that I was comfortable with here, because I actually end up pulling it back a little tiny bit so I can use those debug like garden raised beds. I think they're technically found in Oasis Springs. That's where they kind of originate from. But I used those and actually created like a running garden down the left side of that pool. But I had to pull the pool back, and I did it all off camera because it was honestly really, really hard to figure out. But I'm also trying to figure out kind of a walkway to that main entrance. And I was trying to decide what I wanted that other space to be, since I didn't feel as though I had the room to make the size home that I wanted to if I was going to make an additional home. So I ended up making a little entryway here. And what it ends up being is oh gosh, I always forget the name. It's not a pagoda. A gondola is the boat. It is a gazebo. There we go. It's a gazebo. I end up making a gazebo as well with those, trying to like kind of simulate the paper window type thing or paper door type thing. And you guys will see it eventually, so it'll actually make sense. But I do end up making that. And that's basically just what that area is. It's a very big gazebo, and there is kind of a pool that is surrounding the area that has a low fence. So it's not meant for swimming, it's not meant for fishing, but it's really just there for decoration. So you guys will see what I'm talking about later on in the build, but I think it's really, really pretty. And it's kind of like more of a garden area. I probably could have put like gardening plots or maybe some more plants around there as well, but I felt as though there were a lot of plants in this build already. So you guys will see once I kind of finish laying out these garden beds and everything, because it was a little bit challenging. These are some oddly shaped garden beds. There are some that are flat, like that one right there. However, it was hard to kind of make them work in the specific spaces I wanted them in. And I loved using that tree from Island Living. I don't even remember what the tree is called, but I remember seeing like cherry blossom trees in a lot of either movies or shows that were to take place in Japan. But there were also these red trees, and I don't know the name. I should have looked it up before I even did this voiceover, so I didn't sound so silly. But they were absolutely stunning to me. So I thought that the yellow and the red amongst like the cherry blossom trees would be really, really pretty. So I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. The landscaping was totally out of my comfort zone for this build, but I hope that I did it a little bit of justice considering what we have in game and kind of what we can replicate. So yeah, I hope that makes sense, but I'm still working on the landscaping here and just trying to continuously raise and lower the foundation to make it work. But this is when I decide to kind of change the shape of the pool a little bit, I believe. And like I said, I think I do it off camera, but I just wanted there to be some plants along the fence. It looked so odd just having the pool right up against it. I don't know if you guys will agree, but that's how I felt. And then I also place a fishing sign or two over here so you can at least fish in this area, which is nice. There's a meditation stool, and then I end up using these little like bamboo looking fences from the Island Living debug menu, and then I just place like a bench over here as well. So this is just a small seating area that's somewhat sectioned off, a little bit more of a meditation area as well. And I know that that bench doesn't necessarily match, but I thought it looked nice because I really couldn't find an outside bench that I thought would be a little bit more traditional, and this one looked like it was handmade and handcrafted and kind of going with how buildings were made out of wood with traditional Japanese homes. I just thought it kind of worked. But now we are moving on to the interior of this home, and the very first thing that I ended up working on was not only the floor plan but is the front entryway, which I will put the traditional Japanese term that I researched on screen as well. But this is basically where one would take off their shoes before entering a home. And we saw that in the Snowy Escape expansion as well. And I really wanted to make sure that that was something I did here. So I also noticed that there's a lot of like hidden storage in traditional Japanese homes. Clutter's not a thing. Minimalism is definitely a thing. So I wanted to make sure that there was some quote unquote storage in the front here too for extra shoes and stuff like that. I also raised the little shoe racks that we do have and kind of placed them on top of those cabinets, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. And granted, this is a very long entryway. There are two archways. I was going to say there's two entryways, but there's two archways into the rest of the home as well. I probably divvied up the floor plan a little bit more than what you would see in a traditional Japanese home, but like I mentioned, I did modernize it just a little tiny bit. I wanted there to be some Japanese like cultural influences, but I knew I couldn't do it so much justice and still have it be fully functional. So hopefully you guys understand kind of what I was going for here. But that is like the little front entryway, and the kitchen is at least open to the living room, which I thought was really nice. And I was thinking that since this lot is so big and like the garden spaces are so big, I'm assuming that this family is probably fairly wealthy to have like an estate like this, if that makes sense. And I kind of went for a lot of like dark brown, black, and some light brown wood tones as well. I was kind of struggling with the color scheme a bit, but I wanted it to look as though literally everything was made out of wood and everything was a little bit more quote unquote traditional. It's so hard because I'm learning so much about Japanese culture and everything because of this expansion and because of you guys, because you're sharing things with me and it's so much fun to learn. But I'm also trying to now apply that learning to this build, and it's really challenging because I don't want to do an injustice and I don't want to make any assumptions or get something wrong, but it's so challenging. So I hope you guys understand. I'm just trying to kind of do my best, and I was really happy with the end result. I felt as though I did the research I needed to do to make something that was at least representative of Japanese culture. So hopefully you guys agree. That was my little insecurity coming out. It came out, and now we can go ahead and put it back in a corner. But the kitchen is actually almost done. I do not clutter it up that much at all. They do have a tea brewer, and they do just have a small dining table as well. I think I end up actually in the gazebo. That's actually an outdoor dining area too. I was thinking it was more of like a little tea gazebo, so maybe they take their tea out there in the morning. But yeah, I don't know. It's a full dining table as well. So there's two dining tables. And here I actually went into the debug menu and I found all of these. Technically, they are not teas whatsoever, but they're from Outdoor Retreat, and they're like the different repellents and stuff that you can make with the herbalism skill. But in the trailer, we saw a tea cabinet. So I took that cabinet from Jungle Adventure, and I thought that those may look like jarred leaf teas, if that makes sense. So obviously they're not going to function that way, but I thought that for the sake of trying to replicate that, it kind of resembled it. And then I also put the little like tea boxes, or the boxes of tea bags, on there as well. And then this is the living room. It is very small. There is not much going on here in regards to like decorations. And I just really liked these Seasons couches. They were very modernized, just like the rest of this house. And I also used these surfaces. I think they're more so displays from Get to Work for the retail functionality, but they really resembled the lower sitting tables that we saw in the trailer, as well as what I saw in my research. So I thought that that was just kind of a nice little coffee table area. And upstairs you will see that I actually used that same table and tried to actually make like a lower sitting table. I used the meditation stools as chairs, so your Sims can sit there and they can meditate, but they can't use the table in that functionality that we kind of want them to, that we'll be able to actually use a lot of the new items for. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, the living room is very plainly decorated, but I still think it's very pretty. I tried to add just enough decor to make it look homey and lived in, but nothing too over cluttered or overdone, at least in my opinion. So I hope that you guys agree with that as well. But here I actually ended up using, I think, one of the other decorations from City Living. I think these two here, and I think I may use one or two of the art assets once or twice throughout the build as well, just because we're kind of limited. Like, we don't really have that much that would really show that. So I hope that that is okay with you guys. And then I just added these ceiling lights as well. I really liked those. And with everything being kind of like square, it's kind of what I ended up going with, aside from maybe a stool here and there. I thought that those lights really worked in a build like this, so I hope you guys agree as well. And here is just like a little entryway table, and I just kind of put a plant and a little statue as well as a vase up here, and maybe another light like a little cherry blossom, which I just love cherry blossom trees so much. They're so beautiful. I went to DC like a couple of years ago, and I kind of just missed them, and my goal has always been to go to DC to see them bloom. But what would be amazing is if I were ever to go to Japan, which I have to be honest, I've never really had an interest in going to Japan or really learning more about the Japanese culture or a lot of Asian cultures in general. And it's just because I've never really been super exposed to them. But now that I'm being exposed to them, I want to learn everything under the sun. But if I ever go to Japan, which my fiance has been before, I believe, it would be really, really cool to see all of this stuff in person. So once the world kind of calms down a bit and we have things under control with, the current pandemic and everything, I would love to travel a bit more. And I think Japan probably just made it on my list. But another thing that I learned in traditional Japanese homes is that the bathroom areas are separated. So typically there are separate areas for where you bathe and where you actually use the bathroom, as well as the sink area. I think I just took a creative liberty here just because of The Sims and how things kind of work. I ended up putting the toilet and the sink in the same space, but then the bathing area is totally separate, which I really, really liked. I actually think that's really cool. I always feel, this is the truth coming out, I always feel weird going to the bathroom where I also like get clean. Is that just me? I hope it's not just me, but I actually really like that. I kind of wish that in the US, some of our bathrooms and stuff were set up that way. It's kind of like, well, it's not really like, but in like hotels and everything, at least in the US that I've noticed, is the sinks sometimes are on the outside of the bathroom, which I also enjoy because if you want to like brush your teeth or wash your hands while someone else is using the bathroom or showering, it's kind of nice to have that separation. But anyway, that is how I separated the bathroom downstairs, and I do replicate that upstairs as well. So I should mention this is a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, which to my knowledge with my research, 2 bathrooms in a traditional Japanese home would probably be very rare as well. Please correct me if I am wrong, but unless it's like a very, very wealthy family with a very, very large home, having an additional bathroom like that might be a little bit more on the rare side. So I'm not quite sure, but that's what I was understanding in my research. And now we are trying to kind of figure out what downstairs was going to be, because I was going to make this room an office initially, and then I realized I was not going to have the space upstairs for an additional bedroom. So this ends up being the one and only kids room. I'm thinking that they have a daughter and she is into crafting. Like, she loves knitting and crocheting and all that kind of fun stuff. So she's a very crafty little child sim. I didn't give her a creativity table because I don't think drawing is her forte. I think she really is into kind of like the yarn and string crafts, if you will. But I really liked her room too, because I did use these cabinets here as additional storage next to her bed. And I used the bed from Discover University just because it had the drawers on the bottom as well, which would, again, say that there was some additional storage, which I thought really kind of worked with what I was going for here. And then she ends up just having a dresser over here in the corner. Her room is a little bit small, so I couldn't do too much, but I still think it is decorated enough for a kid. It's a little bit more cluttered than the rest of the house. She's got basically like all of her possessions in this room, and I just kind of add a stuffed animal onto the bed here and maybe a few pictures that she did draw, even though it's not her creative outlet at drawing, but I think she hung up a few of the ones that maybe she drew. And I think that she made this little like penguin toy and a little teddy bear I put down, as well as this little Yarny, which I'm still not over the fact that we have Yarny in this. I just absolutely love that so much. And she's just got a couple of posters and pictures on her wall as well. Nothing too crazy. I didn't fill every single spot on the blank wall with something, which I typically do. So I was kind of proud of myself that I didn't do that here, but I like her room. I would really enjoy that as a kid, even though it is kind of tiny. I still think it's really cozy and it really represents her personality that I was envisioning. And then we move on upstairs, which there is no real landing space. You just walk upstairs to the parents' master bedroom, which I actually really liked, and I thought that maybe it was kind of tipping my hat a little bit to the more open concept in traditional Japanese homes. And here is the lower table as well as the stools that I was talking about a bit earlier. So your Sims can sit on, I think, at least like 2 of those meditation stools. But of course, the table doesn't provide any functionality at all because it is just a display shelf technically. And on one side, on the left side there to the door, that is actually one part of the bathroom. And the other part of the bathroom's to the door on the right. So it's a little bit more separated than I was hoping for, just because of where I needed to place the stairs. It ended up being kind of a weird layout upstairs, but I just kind of went with it, honestly, because I loved the layout downstairs, and I knew going up to the second floor that it was going to be a little bit odd, but I think I made it work. And the parents actually have like a pretty decent sized bedroom, and it's very plainly decorated. They just have their bed. They have 2 little like poofs as little side tables and lamps. There's an art easel up here, and even the dresser isn't as cluttered as I usually make them. It was actually very hard for me to pull back a little bit and not over clutter this space, because I did just want it to look as authentic as I could possibly make it. And then I just work on the final little bathroom area here. So here is where the toilet and the sink are. I kind of made the sink area a little bit more of a display, I suppose, because there are countertops on each side as well. So it's just a little bit more of a bigger space with additional storage is what I was kind of thinking. And then where the bathing area is, I think I just did a shower. I don't think I did a bathtub like I ended up doing downstairs. And I actually liked doing that. I liked having the bathtub and the shower as well. But I think here I just ended up doing the wall shower with the same kind of like room divider area as I did downstairs, because it was a little bit more of a narrow space. I didn't think I could fit anything else in there if I wanted to. And then I just add a couple more decorations up here in the parents' room, and then we move on to this gazebo. So I did build it off camera, but I ended up making that pool around it just because I thought it looked so pretty. And then I end up making this an outdoor dining section, like I mentioned. And then I use those same Discover University room dividers, and it took a while because I had to raise them using the Control 9 key, and I had to kind of figure out how to make them fit without them overlapping. But I did this around the entire gazebo, and I actually love how it looks. I hope you guys like it too, because I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really nice. There is a little bit of space between these dividers and kind of like the trim there, the top of the gazebo, but I thought that was just enough to kind of keep out the elements, maybe if it's like raining or something like that, but still allow them to maybe enjoy like nicer weather. So I hope you guys agree. I hope you like that little accent that I put there, because I thought it looked really nice. And then I just take these little stones and create a little pathway, and that is actually pretty much it for the build. So I hope you guys did enjoy this. I am so excited for this expansion. I can't wait to build with those new items, and I will catch you guys next time I post a video, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!